House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
Hafade one and all, and welcome to House to Home, the part of my week where I get to sit down with the lovely, brilliant, and beautiful ladies that are Liz and Gina from Remax Diamond Realty Guam. And they educate me, and by proxy you, on so much of what is going on with Guam's real estate market, a great industry to be in. Always full of challenges, but that's what part, I would say, ladies, probably like makes it a lot of fun, right? It's never a stagnant industry.
That's right.
No, there's nothing stagnant in real estate.
And you both look incredibly gracious and lovely doing it and everything like that. So you've maintained your sanity. Maybe an area that is is it opportunity or a challenge? Tell me how this goes when it comes to the preserved moratorium on evictions. Because when the pandemic first started last year, there were so many people that were worried, and they're going to say, now I'm out of work, I'm not able to make rent. Will I be kicked out of my place and everything like that? What impact at all has that had on your line of business? And again, do you see this more as an opportunity or a challenge?
I'll let Liz go.
Yeah, when we're helping our clients, who is the landlord, with the moratorium right now and the hold on any evictions, the problem with that is the landlord has a mortgage to pay, and with this current situation, they're not able to do so. But Gina and I, let's say Jason, you have something vacant right now, and Gina and I you're our client, and our job is to help you get the unit filled with a tenant. So when a tenant comes to us, there's usually standard questions we ask. And we would ask, are you currently employed? They have to fill out an application. Now, if they're in an industry where there are issues with, if you're in the restaurant industry or you're with the hotel industry, many of them have been laid off. So we would, of course, ask them certain questions. Now, you as a landlord have the choice to accept them or not. Now, what if they're able to pay up to a certain period? Let's say they pay 3 months, everything is fine, but then their job is affected. So then you're stuck because you have a mortgage to pay, and they're unable to continuously pay the following months. Then what happens? But Gina and I have to give you advice. We're going to tell you, here's a situation. We don't know how long they're going to have their job. It's a factor that's, there's ramifications of the your inability to evict. So they're there, and then what if they stop paying? Then what happens? You can't evict them, you're stuck. So some landlords have the ability to hold, they can hold on to this for a while, but there's a period where you won't be able to pay your mortgage. And then what if the bank starts to do the foreclosure process? So it affects you in many ways. So our obligation to you is to say, here are the different scenarios that could happen, but ultimately it's your choice on how to move forward with it.
So Gina, are you seeing? Oh, sorry, Liz, please.
No, but Gina and I have this discussion. What happens? Hopefully this decision for the eviction will stop at some point, because life has to go on and bills have to get paid. But our obligation as realtors, we may not be able to fill your unit if you decide you don't want to take the risk. So Gina can expound a bit more, but we have different cases like that.
Yeah, Gina, are you seeing a lot of your clientele come back, with questions and with inquiries? And I'm assuming with a lot of trepidation and stress on, what their situation right now is, far past the point when, they've already done a transaction with you.
And you're when you say our clients, you're talking about our landlords, correct,
Yeah.
Jace? No, I have to be honest. The people that we serve, the landlords that we serve, trust in our ability to deliver really good information to them, because that's really our job. We deliver the information. We explain the consequences once they make the decision, because we're not the property owner. Our job is to give the landlord the right information so they can make the best decision possible about what they're able to tolerate. And I say tolerate because we've had situations where the owner has said, I understand that I won't be able to evict them, but I'm okay putting in this tenant. Let's see what happens, because I can afford to write it out. And that's the landlord's decision. It is not ours to give away. So we have to make sure we give them the correct information so that they can decide. But our struggle right now is to really explain to the government the consequences of their actions, these decisions. Good intentions, absolutely. But what are the consequences of all this good intention where they're not the ones that are actually paying for it? It's the landlords, okay? So what happens is, and this is where it's the biggest impact are the tenants that are looking for units in the affordable price range. That's the biggest impact. They come to us, and if you're in a, right now, I still think it's an unstable market if you're working for a private company on Guam that has ever been on the you are not essential list. Because there's still, in my opinion, I still don't have confidence that list, I don't think that list is firm and hard right now. I think what's going to happen is, well, based on what the government has continued to do, I think that list is still subject to fluctuate. So perhaps next month, depending on what happens, that list could, the governor can come back and say, okay, now this industry is back on the you're not essential list. So we have to really talk to our owners and say, hey, we don't know about this line of work, because that's what it's boiled down to. We don't know if this line of work is safe or not. And so depending on that conversation, the landlord, right now, 90% of our landlords are saying, I can't afford to put in a tenant that works in that industry, because if they lose their job, are you really telling me I can't evict them? Yeah, I'm really telling you, you can't evict them. Okay. And that's the consequence of what the government has done. They've taken away the landlord's ability to say, Gina, go ahead and put them in. Right now, they've got a job. I'm willing to go month to month until they lose their job, and then let's deal with it. These landlords are not taking that chance because they can't afford to. There's other ways to solve this problem, but the government is not, they're not forward thinking as far as this is concerned.
Okay, no, that's a good point. And if I may, I'd like to inquire of both of you. Do you have a solution already? Because if we can say that the solution proposed last year was very, very short term, and it was like a tourniquet solution, right? There's eviction protection. If we, and knock on wood, we have to get to that point again where there is the variant of coronavirus comes here, or God forbid we have a second surge and we have to lock down again for an indefinite amount of time and everything like that. Knowing what we now know about its impacts on the economy, what suggestions would you make to policymakers about what should be done?
Well, just real quick before I lose my train of thought, eviction protection does not solve the problem. It puts a Band-Aid on a boil. That's what it does.
So it is a tourniquet, right? It's a short, complete. It should be understood as short term.
It's short term, and I think there was a situation where the government, both local and federal, they decided, well, one way to help was to give out funds to help this issue. But the problem was when monies were given to help people pay their rent, they weren't paying it. They were using it for other purposes, and then it still left the landlord short. If there's a remedy, the remedy would to pay the landlord. So if you were a tenant and you're unable to pay for some reason, then you can apply for it, but that money should go to the landlord because that was the intent. The intent was good, but it wasn't followed through and utilized in a proper way. So, there are solutions out there, but, it doesn't help with the unknown factors with our situation we're in.
And I do know we are getting, I believe it's 661 million from the feds in financial assistance, and the governor's trying to work out like the plan to what to do with those federal monies and everything. Do you know if anyone from your industry has approached like anybody and just said, you know, like, okay, if we have to get to this point again, here's what we believe should be done, or, you know, for the benefit of the landlords?
I myself don't know if our Guam Association of Realtors or the board has reached out to the government, but I do know that program is there, and the government's trying to figure out how to implement it. But I know right now part of that program is that the landlord can actually, with the tenant's permission, the landlord can go in there and apply in behalf of the tenant to have the rents paid. But there's a lot of gaps. Like, what if the tenant on their own they've already moved out of the premises? But you know, there's a lot of ways that this could be addressed, but I'm really pleading to the government to reach out more to the private sector. And you know, two heads are better than one, and maybe people in the private sector can really offer some solutions that's going to work. Because as Liz said, you know, the money needs to go to the proper channels. And for instance, you know, when this first started, we had the temporary food stamp program for people that were laid off. Maybe Guam Housing can have a temporary program that can be enacted, that you might be able to run it much the same way you did the food stamp program, where it's a temporary program that would allocate these funds to pay back rent and rent moving forward for people that were hit the hardest. You know, there's a solution, but just telling landlords that there's an eviction on moratorium is not solving the problem. In fact, it's adding to the problem.
Well, of course, as in any business transaction, there always is a certain amount of risk, or any business decision for that matter. And I would probably say the one advantage that the private sector does have going forward is that we have experience, and that we've got evidence now that we can probably use to make more informed decisions should something bad happen again. But again, you know, pray that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and there are programs out there. I mean, we're getting calls that there's assistance for people to apply for, but that it's limited. It's only good for, let's say, for example, Salvation Army or WestCare. They're helping people get into rental properties, but it's limited. It's only for, let's say, a 3-month window. It's not for the full term of the year. And so a landlord who accepts one of those needs to be advised, hey, this is temporary. Do you want to actually allow a tenant to come in for a short period of time with the hopes that they get back to work? Again, it's a risk. So there are programs to assist, but again, it's temporary. It's not the full solution to the problem.
Yeah, Gino, final word, please.
And see, Jace, these programs that Liz is talking about, they're really out there to help these people that need the help the most. But here's the consequence of the moratorium on eviction. When these people go to the landlord and they say, we've got a temporary voucher for 3 months or 6 months, and the landlord realizes that the government continues to put a lockdown on evictions, that landlord has to look and say, well, you know what? Right now there's a shortage on rentals. And if I put you in, and after 3 months or 6 months, you continue not to be able to pay on your own, and the program's already ended, where does that put me? So what happens is the landlord will look at that and say, I'm sorry, I just can't accept that. I'm not going to be able to help them. But here's the deal. These guys are the ones that need the help the most. And because of the eviction moratorium, they're not going to get it. For the most part, they're not going to get it.
Do you even see possibly maybe rent going up as things maybe begin to stabilize, because as kind of like an offset to the fact that might happen again? They're just like, you know, I've got to hedge my bets almost. I've got a pad.
You know, it's sad because we're limited with a certain, like, for example, people are calling, we want an $800 rental. So the window between 800 and 1,000 is pretty much what many of the locals can afford, but there's hardly anything out there.
Yeah.
So competition is stiff. Once we try to show it, it's like you got to grab it quick or it's gone.
Mhm.
So there's limitations. There's not that many out there, as Gina puts it. So, I mean, a landlord could say, okay, I was normally renting it for 8 and there's nothing out there. Therefore, I will ask for 900 versus 800. And that's a possibility because the demand is there, but they will scrutinize an incoming tenant, review, the standards. Are they employed? The standard stuff they always look at, and then they weigh the risk.
Well, the two things that are going to have to get done to make sure that this concern is properly addressed is people have to put their thinking caps on and people have to speak up. And I know for the two of you, you've never been shy to do either one of those. So, I think the real estate market is in good hands with you guys on the case.
Yeah, we worry about our customers, Jason, and that's not just the landlords.
Well, you're worrying so your customers don't have to, and that is the definition of customer service. So we'll talk some more next week, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more progress on this. So Liz, Gina, thanks a lot as always. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Jay.
Appreciate it as always.